Imagine this, the sound of a baby crying echoing through the narrow cabin of a crowded airplane. Passengers groaned, some rolled their eyes, and a few even pulled their headphones tighter over their ears. But sitting near the front of the plane was a man in a tailored suit, a man who everyone assumed had no time for such chaos, because he was none other than a high-profile CEO, on his way to close a deal that could change his company forever. Yet, that day, his attention wasn't on boardrooms, investors, or profit margins. It was on the tiny, red-faced baby in his arms who refused to stop crying. Before we dive into what happened next, let me pause for a second. If you love heart-touching, real-life stories that inspire, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because trust me, you won't want to miss the kind of powerful stories we bring you every single week. Now, back to this unforgettable flight. The CEO, Daniel, wasn't used to this. His wife had passed away just 6 months earlier, leaving him not just devastated but also the sole caretaker of his 9-month-old daughter, Lily. Business was always what Daniel knew, numbers, strategies, board meetings, but now his world was bottles, diapers, and sleepless nights. The flight attendants noticed his struggle as he bounced Lily gently, whispering soothing words, but nothing seemed to work. Her cries pierced through the cabin, and the disapproving looks from other passengers only made his heart pound harder. He whispered, "Please, Lily, just a little longer," his eyes already weary from days without rest. Then, out of nowhere, a man from 3 rows back stood up. He wasn't dressed in expensive clothes, just a plain t-shirt and jeans. His face looked tired too, but there was something calm, something steady in his demeanor. He walked over to Daniel, and in a voice that surprised everyone around, he said, "May I try?" Daniel hesitated, clutching his daughter tighter. He wasn't sure if he could trust a stranger with his baby, especially in a world where trust was a fragile thing. But the man's eyes told a story of their own, eyes that knew exhaustion, heartbreak, and love all at once. With trembling hands, Daniel finally nodded. The man introduced himself as Michael, a single dad too. He gently cradled Lily, rocking her in a rhythm that seemed practiced. He hummed softly, not a lullaby anyone recognized, but a tune that carried warmth and comfort. Slowly, Lily's cries softened, then faded. Within minutes, she was asleep against Michael's chest. The cabin, which had been filled with tension, now felt lighter. The flight attendants exchanged looks of disbelief, and one of them whispered, "I've never seen anything like that." Daniel watched in stunned silence, his eyes misting with tears. It wasn't just that his daughter had finally stopped crying, it was the realization that someone, a complete stranger, understood his struggle in a way few people could. As the flight continued, Michael sat beside Daniel, still holding Lily as if she were his own. They began talking, and Daniel learned that Michael had lost his wife to illness 2 years ago. He had been raising his young son alone ever since, balancing work, parenthood, and grief. He admitted it wasn't easy, but he discovered something along the way. Children didn't need perfection, they needed presence. For the first time in months, Daniel didn't feel alone. He confessed how terrified he was of failing as a father, of not being enough for Lily. Michael looked him in the eyes and said words Daniel would never forget, "You're here. That's enough. Being present, even in the struggle, makes you the father she'll always need." By the time the plane landed, passengers who had once been annoyed were now touched by what they had witnessed. The CEO, usually seen as powerful and untouchable, had shown vulnerability. And Michael, the single dad who stepped forward with quiet strength, had shown that compassion could silence not just a crying baby, but an entire plane full of judgment. When they disembarked, Daniel insisted on staying in touch. He had gone into the flight feeling like he was drowning, but he walked out with something he hadn't had in months, hope. This story isn't just about a baby crying on a plane. It's about empathy, about strangers turning into lifelines, and about how even in our weakest moments, there's someone out there who understands. It's about realizing that strength isn't measured in power or status, but in love and the courage to keep going. So if this story touched your heart, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Because life is full of struggles, but it's also full of people like Michael, people who remind us that we're never truly alone. And maybe, just maybe, your compassion could be the reason someone else finds hope again. The flight had landed, but Daniel couldn't stop thinking about the moment when Lily had finally gone quiet in Michael's arms. The image was etched in his mind, her tiny hand curled against a stranger's chest, the peaceful rhythm of her breathing, and the way the whole cabin seemed to hold its breath in awe. As they walked off the plane together, Daniel carried Lily while Michael walked beside him, holding nothing but a small backpack that had clearly seen better days. Daniel noticed the frayed straps and worn zippers and felt a pang of guilt. Here he was,